Hey everyone, Jonathan and Molly here, and welcome back to Savoring the Magic, where we believe there is magic in the details.
That's right, so we are back in Magic Kingdom today, and because this video is releasing on Veterans Day, we thought there is no place more appropriate to be on Disney property than in Liberty Square. So today we're going to talk about some of its development, a lot of cool details to be found, and look at all of the main attractions that are here. So come along with us on this excursion. There's literally no better place to start than at the beginning of this land. Liberty Square is wholly original to Magic Kingdom, although its original idea did come when planning for Disneyland. Walt initially tasked Imagineers with creating some offshoots off of Main Street, one of which would have been Liberty Street, a walk through colonial America, and Edison Square, which would have been a celebration of innovation.
Those concepts never made their way to Anaheim, but the colonial American concept did make its way to Magic Kingdom. Perhaps it's no surprise that Roy and others were very concerned about honoring Walt, and what better way to do that than create this land. Walt was terribly patriotic, and in some ways this whole area feels like a tribute to him, in addition being a love letter to America's history.
Of course, it was more than just a sentimental move, it was also strategic. On the East Coast, historic attractions like the Freedom Trail and the Liberty Belle were extremely popular with guests. In fact, we were on the Freedom Trail about a month ago, and it's still popular today. We will link that video below.
Back to our current topic though, Liberty Square would take advantage of the historical interests of its guests. And on the side of timing, it was also an excellent call. Magic Kingdom would be opening in 1971, just 5 years before America's bicentennial. So Imagineers would use the same tricks and innovations that they always did when building something new, but it would have distinct historical influences within the land.
So one cool thing about Liberty Square is that it has a geographical and chronological transition that starts in it and reaches all the way into Frontierland. If you start at the Haunted Mansion, it represents the New York Hudson River Valley in the early 1700s. As you move toward Columbia Harbor House and its surrounding area, it's meant to reflect Boston in the mid-1700s. The Hall of Presidents is based on Philadelphia in the late 1700s at the time of the Revolution and the Continental Congresses. It even hints at the early 1800s, where the little stream feeds into the rivers of America. From there, Frontierland continues the story all the way through pioneering days and the late 1800s, and of course, to the west. The whole area takes architectural inspirations from the entirety of New England and Virginia from before, during, and after the Revolutionary War.
Like we mentioned before, there are a lot of little historical details to appreciate within Liberty Square, and one of them is the bridge behind me. It's inspired by Old North Bridge in Concord, Massachusetts, where the American Revolution began.
So another one of those very cool details is the Liberty Tree, which is where we're headed now. Historically, the Liberty Tree was a giant elm near Boston Common where the Sons of Liberty and others would gather to deliver speeches and calls for revolution. Magic Kingdom honors that history with a southern live oak that was identified on property as already being 100 years old. It weighed 38 tons, stood 40 feet high, and had a circumference of 60 feet.
Of course, this tree was a pain to relocate, but they did it. They had 2 steel rods drilled through the hardest section of the trunk to form a cross where it could be lifted. Then it was very slowly moved by a 100-ton crane over an 8-mile journey that took place from June 11, 1970 until March 6, 1971, until it found its home here. They also had to reinsert the root plugs before replanting it to ensure the trunk would regenerate. After that arduous move, it was adorned with 13 lanterns to represent the American colonies.
Right next to the Liberty Tree is the Court of Flags with the Liberty Belle in its center. The Court of Flags honors the original states that would become united under the first Constitution. Each pole has not only the state flag, but also a plaque with the name of the state and the year it ratified the Constitution. There's also a replica of the first national flag that was used in 1787 to symbolize the joining of the states.
In the center of the court is the Liberty Bell, which was added in 1987 for the bicentennial of the Constitution. Perhaps the coolest thing about the bell, though, is that it was cast from the bell's original mold.
So there are a lot of smaller details to enjoy about this land, which we're going to point out as we move around different attractions and shops. And we're going to start at the back and kind of work our way back up to the front, mainly because of the way it moves chronologically. So we are going to start at Haunted Mansion. We're not going to show a lot here because, guys, we have been in Haunted Mansion a lot. We just did that whole long video for Halloween. So we'll link that down below. But yeah, let's go give a brief visit.
Always a great time.
Ooh, I just got
Oof,
blinded by
that
the light.
sun
It was
is
really a great
very
time
bright.
up until that. No, it was still a great time. However, now that we're leaving Haunted Mansion, let's point out some of these details that you can see as you leave here and work your way back up.
There was a reference there from what was that song? Dadgummit. Blinded by the Light. Who sings that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not good at that. I'm really not good at that.
Springsteen.
There you go.
There you go. That's the name I was looking for.
While you're walking away from Haunted Mansion toward the rest of Liberty Square, you'll notice a food stand, of course the Liberty Square Market, and the side of the Hall of Presidents building. If you look at the window on the second floor, you'll see the lanterns for Paul Revere, inspired by the poem and the warning about the British coming, one if by land and two if by sea.
Even the water fountains. In theme. Sharing the bounty of the harvest. And a pro tip, if you need a place to sit to watch some of the parades, right here outside the tavern. Pretty great spot. Hello, friend.
Are you alive?
Are you a Liberty Squirrel? Here since 1776.
Okay, don't get too frisky. We good? All right, our next stop as we walk is the Liberty Belle, our majestic turn-of-the-century riverboat, which would have been a staple of early frontier life. So, let's go ride it.
A few more things about the Liberty Belle. It does serve as a transitional element between Liberty Square and Frontierland. Chronologically, that made sense. Also, the original 450 passenger boat here was named the Richard F. Irvine in honor of the former vice president and director of design for WED. In 1996, the name was changed to better suit the land, but you'll still notice Irvine's name on one of the ferry boats at TTC.
As we come off the boat, also notice the period-appropriate stocks, which we pass on our way to the main attraction. I know it may sound a little sacrilegious to not call Haunted Mansion the main attraction of this land, but there's only one attraction that really sums up the legacy of Liberty Square, and that's the Hall of Presidents.
The Hall of Presidents was born out of the concept that Walt had for that Liberty Street concept in Disneyland that never came to be. But even then, Walt wanted a show that represented all the American presidents using audio animatronics. With the working title One Nation Under God, the original show would tell the story of our Constitution and culminate with a presentation from those audio animatronic presidents.
The concept found new life here in Magic Kingdom, mostly because of advancements made with great moments with Mr. Lincoln. Imagineer Blaine Gibson was brought on board to sculpt the presidents, and he sculpted the faces for each one of them for the attraction's opening in 1971.
The sculpt for Lincoln began with the use of an actual life mask that was made of the president while he was still in office. The Lincoln figure alone is capable of 47 different functions, including 15 head motions and facial expressions. Most of the presidents didn't speak when the attraction first opened. Today, though, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and the current sitting president all speak to represent 3 different eras of the country's history.
Outside of the sculpting, Imagineers did an incredible amount of research to make sure that each piece was historically accurate for each president. This included being meticulous about costumes and wigs. They meticulously picked out textiles, hairs, shoes, and stitching techniques that would fit the time period for each president.
They even included personalized details where they could. For Washington, the Imagineers took inspiration from the Sheraton-style desk Congress gifted him for his inauguration in 1789, as well as different pieces from inside Independence Hall.
The rocking chair behind JFK is actually a detailed replica of the one that he used in the Oval Office. It was ordered from the same manufacturer that made Kennedy's original chair.
Ulysses S. Grant has a brandy glass on the table next to him. And Teddy Roosevelt has a small ashtray with a rearing horse on it to symbolize his maverick style in politics.
The show has been altered more than a few times throughout its history. In 1992, it was altered so that the sitting president could make his address. As of 2008, the show has shifted to focus on the historical connection between the leaders and the commonality of spirit that led them through their time in office. It's part of the reason why the presidential oath is what's recited at the end of the presentation.
So now that we've talked about it, let's go walk inside and look at some of the displays that they have around in the building before we go watch the show. So the exterior of the Hall of Presidents isn't based on any one specific building. It's kind of an amalgamation of different federal-style civic buildings in Philadelphia during the late 1700s. Also notice the date above the door is the year the Constitution was ratified. And here's our favorite thing here. It's the key to Disneyland.
This program is dedicated to the memory of Walt Disney. In 1971, his love for America inspired the creation of the Hall of Presidents, a place to celebrate the optimism and goodwill he saw at the heart of the American story. Walt's vision was to honor the nation by honoring the American presidency.
It is 1783, and the smoke is clearing in the wake of the Revolutionary War. Over the course of 8 grinding years, General George Washington has led a force of shopkeepers, farmers, and Native American allies to victory over the greatest military power in the world. A new nation has been born, independent and free. George Washington's stature and bearing have marked him as a leader. His integrity has made him a great one. Washington knows that many generals who have led successful revolutions make themselves dictators or kings. Instead, he steps down from power and retires to his home, Mount Vernon. The world takes note, and George Washington becomes the symbol of American ideals. The tall, lanky, some say uncouth candidate from Illinois is a master of words at a time when speeches are printed in full for people to read. A house divided against itself cannot stand, he has said. With Lincoln's election, the House does indeed divide.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Our presidency is no longer just an idea. It is an idea with a proud history. Ladies and gentlemen, the presidents of the United States of America.
So I know it's probably because I'm just getting older, but I really love that show.
No, I do too. Honestly, we sat toward the front, which we don't normally do,
Yeah.
and I don't know why, but it gave me more chills up front. And honestly, the narration is so well done. The whole tracking of the presidency through American history is very well paced. So, highly recommend. It was a little eerie to be so close to them, though. Like, whenever the curtain raises, normally I'm in the back, and I'm like, oh, look, they're kind of moving. But up front, it is a little unsettling, but still really cool.
It's one of those things that I wouldn't want to do here at night.
No, I saw that Doctor Who episode.
Yeah,
no,
that's
thank
true.
you. So,
I think part of it too is since we just got back from Boston, I'm like in full history mode more than I usually am.
especially Revolutionary War history.
Specifically.
We've been in deep, folks. We've been in deep.
Definitely.
So now that we're out of the Hall of Presidents, obviously we're just kind of walking around the front of Liberty Square. If you listen to the music in the area, it's all period specific and uses instruments only found during the colonial time period. You'll find a lot of the plants around here are also red, white, and blue. There are some pink, but a variation of red.
Another fun detail, actually, these windows will open and close with the parade sometimes, as the speakers are inside there.
Yep. Ye Olde Christmas Shop has a story in which the location had previously operated as 3 different storefronts, a perfumery, a silversmith, and an antique store. You can really tell that whenever you look at the architecture of the building and how it changes. Also, notice the name of Keppel outside of one of the doors. It's named for Walt's grandfather, who was Keppel Disney. And then, of course, Liberty Square would not be complete without some Sleepy Hollow references. Obviously, one of the snack places here is Sleepy Hollow Refreshments. They do have an absolutely incredible waffle game going on, by the way. But outside of that, architecturally, the building for Sleepy Hollow actually draws inspiration from Irving's New York Hudson River Valley estate, Sunnyside. And then your other Sleepy Hollow reference can be found outside of the entrance to Ye Olde Christmas Shop. Notice that you can sign up for music and voice lessons by appointment with Ichabod Crane as your instructor. Liberty Square was wildly popular when the park opened in 1971 and continued to be that way going through the bicentennial. I feel like now it's such an area that can be overlooked, and I hope in the future you guys can notice some of the incredible details to be found here because it is full of them. In fact, let us know in the comments, have you ever noticed some of these things before? We want to know.
That's right. Thanks for joining us on today's excursion. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps us out. We have videos coming out every Wednesday and Saturday. But until next time, keep savoring the magic.